All right, everybody, welcome to part 2, class 4, glowing color in the luminous landscape. And I am going to be doing a demo painting the Columbia River Gorge using strong color contrast and temperature contrast. I'm just going to go ahead and spotlight myself here. All right, so did I appear big there and staying big when anybody else talks?
Test.
No.
Okay, so pen is not the one I need to spotlight for everybody. Move pin and
Yeah.
okay, there it sticks to me.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, I decided to go ahead and just talk you guys through my laying out of the colors. I went ahead and printed up the reference, and I'm going to throw that into a transparent sleeve, which I buy in bulk for a couple reasons. So I like these protective sleeves just because my oily fingers and everything else. So I'll often put the reference into those. But also I have a bunch of 3-ring binders with all of my references, especially because I'm working on, 5 different paintings at a time, a lot of time, that just having the binders, keeping them organized. So I'll probably tape that up somewhere where I can see it, or I'll just keep it down and you guys will know that that's roughly the reference we're working on. I'm almost wondering, my horizon line's pretty close to the middle here. Decide if that's much of a point, but maybe I'll just paint it as it is for now. But normally, if you guys were thinking about it, I might try to edit it a little bit so the horizon line wasn't so quite in the middle. All right, I'm just going to squeeze out my paints, move this over so that's what we can see. And let me know if the new lights are working for us or are annoying. May have to already move this one back a little bit.
Can you fold that reference photo so it's where the horizon line is where you want it?
Yeah, but then I'll change my proportion.
Okay, never mind. Yep.
I mean, I could like just chop off my pine trees probably, because I want to probably bring down my sky. So it'd be something kind of like that probably would be more interesting, which isn't bad. I don't miss the pine trees.
I like the original.
Anybody miss the pine trees if they're gone?
I miss the pine trees.
Aw.
Just
What
do
about-
whatever you want to do. That's fine.
Yeah.
What about just like taking a little less of the bottom, just with your own mind, and adding a little more sky?
I want to do that. I still would have to, I could chop from this side and lose, but then he's really just sticking out of the side.
I like the bottom. I'm sorry.
Let's go ahead and take a step back. And let's use this opportunity to go back to editing, because this is important. You know what I mean? Design and composition is the most important thing in the beginning of a painting, and always. So I'm going to, everybody sees the Padlet page?
Yes.
All right, I'm just going to pop open the gorge. So this is, again, that photo editing software that literally just comes with my computer. Again, I just click the image and this pops up. I'm going to change this. I'm going to go to the edit button. And I'm going to change it to the 4x5 because this is a 16-inch by 20-inch. And just to show you really quickly, I'm turning it to the vertical, which actually could be really pretty cool.
Just as an FYI, the picture of the gorge, sorry, my printer's going off. The picture of the gorge that you sent in the email is different. It doesn't, it's already cropped. It doesn't have the pine trees in it.
Look at me being smart and now being dumb. All right, well, hopefully this will, that's funny. Yeah, I'm guessing I thought that same thing before when I painted it. So, I mean, this could be a really cool painting if anybody wants to do a horizontal, kind of interesting. And I can bring this, if I want the Vista house to really be in the prime spot, when I hold it down, you guys see the crossbars. Some of the best points for putting a focal point are right around that area where the two lines meet. So that could be like, as far as design is concerned, it's kind of boring though with so much foreground, and the sky colors are so beautiful. So I could invert it. That's kind of nice. But now my horizon line, this is the marker for the midway point right here. So I get, yeah. So anyways, I can zoom in, I could zoom out. But let's go back to a horizontal view. Let's see what happens if we, okay, so it wasn't even a 16 by 20 because there's more of it over here. So if I want a 16 by 20 with as much information from the original photo, I would probably want it to be something like this, which isn't bad. My horizon line, or the midpoint, is right here. So my line is a little bit above it. But let's see if we can't crop it in a little bit. And the nice thing about having it set at the 5x4 here is no matter which direction I move this, it stays at that proportion. Everybody understands that?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. And again, my goal is to get this horizon line out of the middle. Here it is at middle. And you guys can see how it kind of makes it a little more boring, but there's enough dynamicism in this image. I don't know if it would bother me too much.
I don't think so, because you can hardly see any of the actual horizon line.
Right. We almost treat this area kind of in the foreground as it.
Right.
So yeah, it does give us some leeway. It's just, again, guidelines, not rules. They basically say don't put, don't have your horizon line right in the middle, but lots of amazingly beautiful paintings do. So I'm just thinking of the guidelines again, like the best point of interest is kind of in between, around where these lines meet. So I could try to put the Vista house if I want the Vista house to kind of be my focal point. The one thing too is this is going to split horizontally. So I probably don't want to put it right in the middle either, right? Because then I almost have a horizontal split and a vertical split.
Right.
So I want to probably keep things off balance a little bit. I've got Rooster Rock back here, I believe is the name of it. That's kind of an interesting, weird little shape. I could kind of like that. You can still zoom back out.
And it's nice to see the longer river,
Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah.
I like the sense of space when you're looking at the whole picture. That's
All right, well, let's just see if
Well,
I
that puts your cliff right in that, right there at the focal point.
Yeah, that's a nice spot. And then it kind of, this leads back to here. You do have your trees are still there. So all I've lost a little bit over here, which isn't important.
Can you define in this picture the horizon line? Is it where the sky meets the mountains or the river ends?
Water.
Yeah, no, it's generally, I mean, it's probably, I don't know what that's what this thing, drag the image to use the arrows. Oh, okay. So it's telling me I could use my arrows to move. Okay, so for those of you that don't have a mouse that does as much as mine does, you can use your arrows on your keypad.
mm-hmm.
How do I make it stop telling me that? Okay, I got it. So there, my horizon is a little bit above half.
It's where that water is, right?
Yeah, and then
The edge of the water at the top there.
yeah, basically it'd probably be a touch higher than that because the water keeps going, but yeah, right in that area. Really close. Yeah, the horizon line's not going to be on the top of the mountains, Michelle. It's generally at the base of your furthest away mountains. And it's just kind of a, yeah, I mean, the earth's round, so, but yeah, it's just good to know that you just don't, and I think what helps this one is if it was just an image that had a very straight horizon line,
That makes a difference.
yeah, that's, let's crop that guy really quick. Again, quite a deviation, but let's bring this one and put the horizon line smack in the middle. Let's put our focus smack in the middle.
Mm.
And you see how undynamic that becomes?
Yes.
Still interesting, but having it off center is more interesting. I like to work in thirds a lot. You see how it's split into thirds horizontally and vertically with that grid system. So a lot of times I will loosely think in thirds. That's already way better, right? Than having in the horizon line splitting it perfectly.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
you get the ends, you get these another,
Michael, doesn't it also define the importance? Like what's important in that piece? Is it the sky or is it the water? So by moving it either up or down, you're telling the viewer that this piece is really about the water or the sky.
Very
right.
good.
Yeah, this becomes a very different image, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Still kind of yeah, this is about the water. So yeah, that's why everybody calls everything a landscape, but I always say skyscape or landscape. Yeah, because this one's even a little crooked here, but this one's much more about the water than the sky in this point, because it's about these amazing waves and stuff. Yeah. So yeah, generally kind of picking, but the clouds in this are way more interesting than the water. And could be something like that. So anyways, editing. We so often just accept our photos as they come. And you can really see how I could change, so much of it by making it a vertical, by making it a horizontal. I mean, I could absolutely make this a painting about the cliff and the rock. I mean, that would be a fine painting. But we want the big scene. We're going grand vista. Okay, so again, here's my horizon line right there. I mean, not my horizon line, my halfway line in the painting. So
Right.
we're a little bit above it. And now we can vote. Like, does the fact that, everything's moving up at an angle, I can actually angle some of these clouds too to make them a little more interesting. I think that'll make it so that midpoint line is less important, because normally I would want to probably zoom in even a little more.
Perfect.
Maybe one tree instead of two.
That's nice.
Yeah, that looks nice.
And look, now I already almost got it to a third. What do you guys think about having that much foreground?
That's
I
good.
I like that.
It looks nice.
All right, really quickly, I'm just going to check what it would be if I moved it back down. I mean, I do love the colors in the sky, but we're back to right in the middle with the horizon line, and it does feel more boring. Feels more stagnant. This feels like there's more motion.
Yes.
Yep.
I'm going there. All right, let's save as. I'm just going to write print because I need to make a print of it.
Good idea.
Saving that to the color class.
Are you going to do a black and white too?
I'm not, because I'm going to show you how I would start with using color right away. Okay, so right now, see how the printer wants you to do it? It's like, you want to paint a vertical. So I got to remember, change it to landscape. And pray that my printer has enough ink left.
Oh, I hope it does, because I just got new ink for mine and I couldn't believe how much it was.
Oh, it's more expensive than gold.
Yeah.
I don't think that's true, but maybe by sheer
Close.
weight, it's close. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, I actually signed up for a print program where I get I can print 300 pages per month for $10. So and that's all configured so they know when I'm running out of ink and they just send it. So that's, plus my wife also works from home, so she's printing up a bunch of pages. So that seems to be a more viable way for us to do it. But it's weird to think we're still spending $120 a month on ink. And it's also weird when you get to the end of the month and you're like, we don't have any more prints to make. You run out. Because my wife will print up like whole handbooks for different businesses. All right. And if it didn't print, I can always just fold that other one because we like this design. And I will just go ahead and adjust this to black and white so I can just look at it from my computer. So I'm going to go to adjust and saturation, bang. And usually when I change it to black and white, what I will do is up my brightness. I find that black and whites look kind of dreary. And I can even push up my contrast because that helps me to find the strong lights and darks in it. So a lot of times in the beginning of the painting, I'll work with a black and white with strong brightness, strike, and strong contrast, just so I can really see the separations, kind of cleans it out, almost posterizes it for me.
After class, can you email us the full image?
The full one, the one that's not been edited?
Well, yeah, because the one that you sent us for today's class didn't have the trees on the left-hand side. So
Is it on Padlet? You
Check.
can print it off Padlet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the full version is on Padlet. But if you have a difficulty, you would go over to the three dots and you would go to download attachment.
Oh, okay, good. Thanks.
And it'll ask you where you want to save it to.
Okay.
And I will say, never mind. All right, so I have that black and white up on my monitor. I've printed up the color. I maybe could print this for myself just because. Back to landscape mode. All right, so I've got that printing. And I appreciate you guys letting me do that. I think that's really important to learn. It is design, design, design. I mean, literally, I've talked about the pyramid of importance of food. I've seen other artists use it as well. It's design and composition is literally the most important thing in your painting. You cannot, no matter how gorgeous your colors are, paint your way out of bad design. Spend the time, spend the effort, and I appreciate you guys letting me do that. Spend the time to have a good design. You'll get away with a lot more in the end of the painting. And again, you just can't paint your way out of bad design. Believe me, I've tried hundreds of times. All right, I'm going to go check out the printer and see how they did. There we go. Oh, you guys can't see me. Am I still sharing or am I back?
We see your computer screen.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right. Am I back to the easel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So here is the printout. We got it. Perfect. Black and white. Nice and clear as far as seeing my big shapes. You know, if I was painting it by myself, I might do some experimenting by getting rid of this weird little thumb here. Just, I don't like the bottleneck that it creates here, kind of an hourglass shape in the water. So I may either get down, you know, and I know as the tide comes up, it gets thinner. So I can, you know, just have it kind of coming down along the side. So lots of options there. And generally with most things, I've found that I can adjust and people don't mind. Every once in a while, I'll have some guy who will come up and like, oh, you know that Haystack Rock is so and so shape, and or Mount Hood is so and so shape, and just exactly right. But I don't care usually, and that's just another license that I've given myself. I'm after the poetic. I'm after the loose representation. A lot of times I just say that I'm painting how I want it to feel versus how this, and it, you know, again, it's a bad iPhone photo sent through my computer, altered, and a bad print, right? None of this is high quality. So I can change any of this completely if I think it's going to help. So I'm going to lay out my palette the same way I always do. I'm going to also use my very typical split primary palette. So I'm putting my titanium white here. My next color generally is going to be my greenish yellow, whether that's a cadmium lemon. In this instance, it is my Hansa yellow. It is almost empty, so I need to grab my little, you guys can see all the kinks in there. That's from this. I will put it up about as high as I can and just roll this, and the paint will start to come out. There's usually a lot more paint. These things are about 25 bucks. I don't know, but they pay for themselves very quickly by how much paint you can get out of a tube that you almost think is empty.
What's that thing called? A tube squeezer,
Tube ringer.
tube ringer.
Yeah, it's got so much paint all over it, I can barely read it. Tube ringer. Then I put my orangish yellow. In this instance, it is going to be India yellow for me. It might be a cad yellow. It could even be an orange-ish color. And it does appear quite orange, I know. But I like that separation of having a very cool, a much cooler yellow, a much warmer yellow. This is also a transparent yellow. This is a semi-transparent yellow. If I was using a cadmium, I would have an opaque yellow and a transparent yellow. So depending on how you like to work, if you like your paints to be a little more opaque than I generally do, you might want to consider the cadmiums. I am going to be using a opaque warm red because of knowing that how important the rock, the warmth in the rock is. So I'm going to use a cadmium red light. If it was less, like if my warm reds were in the clouds or in the sky or in a reflection in water where transparency might be useful, I may use a more transparent warm red. My cool red is quinacridone red, which is always the case. And just again, for those of you keeping track, I oftentimes am only using quinacridone red. I don't have two reds. I've found that there's a lot of versatility in it. I can warm it up or cool it down really nicely. But quinacridone is, I mean, it's nice to have that variation. With my blues, now I'm going over to my ultramarine, which is my bluish, my purplish blue. And you'll hear me keep repeating what way they lean, purple or green, because I want you guys to know that you don't have to use the exact colors when using a split primary. I just want you to be aware that you want kind of a color that leans one way or a color that leans the other way. So this is manganese blue hue, which is my blue that leans more towards the greens. And that could be my whole palette. I think today I may put out a bit of my guest colors today are going to be a Payne's gray, which is a very cool blue, very, very dark, but very bluish dark. So I know that anything I darken with this is going to go towards blue. And I'm going to go ahead and put out some burnt umber. I could use a transparent brown, but I'm going to go ahead and use an opaque brown. And the reason I'm gonna do that is almost just to speed this process up and allow me to get to my darks and my opaques in the foreground faster. And this will warm up those darks slightly, especially compared to the Payne's Gray. So I've got a dark that I can use to darken my shadow cool areas, and a dark that I can use to have the warmer darks. Does that make
Can I-
sense?
Michael, could I ask a question?
Please.
Actually, it's what's the difference between French ultramarine blue and regular ultramarine blue?
Generally the brand,
And that's pretty much it, huh?
as far as I can tell.
Okay,
Was that last one burnt umber you said?
Yeah, I put down burnt umber. And the reason I put down burnt umber is, and I probably didn't need Payne's Gray and burnt umber, because the burnt umber and the ultramarine blue just make such a wonderful, fast, fairly opaque dark. You know, that I can make warmer or cooler just by which way, you know, if I have more blue or more burnt umber. But it's just a really wonderful, if I wanted a more transparent dark, I would probably use, instead of burnt umber, I would probably use a transparent oxide brown or earth brown. Look on the back, see if it's transparent. This burnt umber should be opaque. All right, let's get painting. Cleaning off my palette knife. I'm gonna pick up a mid-sized flat to sketch with, because I'm not looking for detail. So this is a size 6. You know, for a lot of people that might be kind of a big brush. I do have a size 12 here that I'm hoping to do a lot of the painting with once I've kind of got my design established. I guess a size 6 is the smallest brush I pulled out. Maybe I'll need a size 4 or a size 2. But I might urge you guys as a challenge to kind of use the biggest brush that you're comfortable with for a while. Or maybe not the biggest brush you're comfortable with, the biggest brush you're slightly uncomfortable with. Especially in the beginning, I think a big brush can be really useful. You could use any color you wanted to kind of sketch in the beginning stages of your painting. I actually often will use the transparent earth red, or I like actually quinacridone a lot of the times for kind of sketching in. I find that it doesn't muddy up my color much. I'm just gonna add, I just dipped the very corner of my paintbrush into my paint thinner. Barely, barely. I don't want it dripping. I just want it to be a little bit faster, a little more, a little slipperier. Like, again, I compare like using unadulterated just paint out of the tube. A lot of times feels like when you're writing with a pencil and it has that little bit of drag, just a touch of paint thinner to it, the Gamsol, makes it feel a little bit more like a nice ballpoint pen, how it just slides across the surface. A lot of times in my sketching stage, I want that kind of slip to it. And I think we decided that we're about, we're 1/3 roughly now is where our horizon line is. So if I've got a 16 inches, 1/3 would be about 5 1/4, about a little over 5 inches down. So I'm going to go ahead and mark 5 1/2 here. Just give myself 2 of them so that I very lightly. I don't want this dark because you never actually see the horizon line in this painting. So that's just a marker for myself to kind of know where I'm at. And that horizon line is roughly where the water and these hills meet. So give me just a second as I kind of begin to sketch out some of these big shapes. And I don't need to paint things at this stage. I'm just looking for big shapes. And you can see that the hills are barely separate of each other. So I can decide, like, does this just become one big shape? Or do I need to separate that out mentally? I'm gonna go ahead and think right now that maybe I don't need to separate that out, that I can just kind of have a big shape. Might need just a touch more paint thinner. If you're more comfortable using a littler brush at this stage, because you can see I'm definitely just leaning it on its side. Be nice to have some kind of marks on here so I kind of knew a little better where my midway was on my reference. But I'm gonna kind of get things knocked in, and then I'll do a little more redraw. And the great thing again about all this uncomfortable red paint is, since I'm putting it on quite thin, I'm pretty positive that I'm going to be able to just cover it up without much issue. Very quickly, I'm like, okay, that didn't come out far enough. We're going to bring him out a little further. And this is all very sketchy. I'm not trying to make anything perfect. If I wanted to, I could really spend time. You're more than welcome to draw it in pencil if that makes you more comfortable. Whatever it takes, do it in acrylic. But I'm not 100% worried about everything being exactly the right measurements, exactly the right. Feels weird, but the Vista house is so high. And it's amazing how not pretty my sketches will be a lot of the time. because like you see, I'm second guessing myself, I'm changing my mind. I'm kind of trying to compare one thing against the other. It's important that I get it right enough as I figure out what's important. So I'm constantly like, okay, where does this line up here? Where does the Vista House line up here? How does it line up height-wise against here? So I'm using all sorts of different mental measurements to kind of figure out where things are meeting.
How textured is your board?
It was super, super smooth. And then I put one additional coat of gesso on top of it with a roller. So it's got a tiny bit, but no, it's a lot smoother than I would almost normally like it. So I just put one quick thin coat of gesso this morning as I realized. So I actually prepped a huge 30-inch by 40-inch panel this morning, and then realized that would be better served for the next assignment, not this one. And I'm not painting, you don't see me drawing in every darn tree. I'm just trying to find my biggest contrasts, brights and the darks, the lights and darks. I am not thinking things, obviously. I am not painting things. I'm just looking for contrast points, lights and darks. The detail will come, and most of the detail that we think is important isn't important. What's nice too is I've got all these weird creases and things growing in certain ways, so you can almost see like must have been avalanches and things before. So these tree lines come down and then they grow between the rocks. So there's like a ridge line there that connects to. There's kind of a tops of trees. They're kind of growing, not in rows per se, because it's a forest, but I can definitely kind of see these breakdowns in the value structure where the light is hitting certain things and creating some shapes, some dark value shapes or light value shapes that is allowing me to, again, not paint things, not look for things. I'm just looking for strong light and dark contrast to kind of figure out where I am in space. Does that make sense, you guys, how I'm kind of describing how I'm thinking about drawing?
Yeah.
You get yourself in a world of hurt when you start thinking things. Again, this is a map. This is not a painting. This is a map to where things are going to exist in my painting. All of this can be adjusted and changed as I move forward, but I'm just trying to figure out, where in space do I put this color? Where in space do I put this value? And I'm just kind of creating markers so that when I come back in with the colors, I know where in space I am. And use the bigger brush like for bigger areas of shadow. And again, I'll start putting on some paint really quickly here. I do want to step back and make sure that it's sort of working. I hope. You guys noticing any big alterations between the reference and make this hill a little taller. This one comes down a little more. This is up. There's another one behind it, kind of a plateau maybe. And again, I often will kind of change it. Depending on where you're at, you oftentimes get these weird tangents where a bunch of the hills will all of a sudden kind of line up. And so I will, if that's the case, when I'm looking out painting plein air, I will actually lower and raise certain hills just so I get more of a sense of depth. And again, some of these hills are so close in value, these two, that, you know, if, I don't know, I could paint them more soft edged almost. Just about ready to kind of step back my Vista house here. So my Rooster Rock is kind of gonna be there. It's a little island here, but I don't want to put much because I don't want to be painting around the little things. So again, my detail will come. I don't want to start painting in. You know, I could kind of hint at my clouds. Do I like these kind of horizontal clouds that are going on? Or would I prefer something with a little more dynamicism? If I want more dynamicism, I should either look up references or plan that. Maybe I'll buy myself a minute and kind of think about my clouds. So we've got this a very strong line here, and then we have strong lines coming in towards here, which definitely helps with our point of interest here, the Vista house, because lots of lines coming towards it, lines leading up to it. So I can decide, do I really want to play that up? Maybe I have some clouds that are right. But maybe that's too obvious and too silly, which I probably believe it is. The good thing too about keeping my paint really thin is I can just come through, wipe that out for a little bit. What do you guys think about clouds here? What should we do? I did one painting where I had big storm clouds catching the light back there, and that was kind of nice. You know, where they're catching the shadow, so the light is on the top of them.
Well, what's your focal point? Who's the star?
Star is here, I think.
So maybe something that kind of points you back in that direction gently.
Gently.
And when you change the clouds, make them darker, don't you change the atmosphere? In other words, lighting?
No, because the sun is coming from this way and the clouds will be behind it. But yeah, I mean, that is a good point. Absolutely. But if on a sunrise, that would definitely, where the sun would be setting back here. But instead, I am the sun, or, you know, the sun is my direction.
Okay.
It's hitting the face of this. So it's a face lit image. Good question, though, and a good observation.
You had a painting reference a couple classes ago with clouds that literally pointed and radiated down and out.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of think in that way.
No, they were kind of going from one point, like above your focal point, and then radiated out this way.
Oops, I can't see you, sorry.
Almost like an arrow.
And now I can see you. I zoomed, I stepped towards the camera.
I can see if I can find the photograph and just hold it up for you, because I know we used it in a couple classes ago. And it
You
was
mean like from the upper right, sort of pointing?
pointing, and it was literally like an arrow pointing down. I'll see.
Yeah,
if I
but I feel like we have a lot of arrows going on.
Oh, okay.
And how is that going to affect the light on the mountain?
Clouds are not going to affect the light on the mountain because they're behind, the light is behind, the clouds are behind the mountain
Okay,
and front of the mountain. The light is coming from behind me or the viewer and hitting this side of the painting. Whereas the clouds would be back behind it. But if it was sunrise, which would be behind, you know, coming up from behind this mountain and then coming through those clouds, then yes. But I do want to remember that my clouds are also being face lit, meaning lit from this side, for the viewer's side.
I
I'm
think the
holding up that
horizontal, the
Michael.
slight horizontal ones will work well.
The
Like,
ones that are already there in the,
yeah,
yeah,
like
true,
they're-
true.
Who's holding it
Can
up?
we just look at the reference again?
There's the reference I had, Michael.
Okay, so the one from the creek. Okay, thank you. And is that, no, that's backlit, right?
Yes, and yours are front lit.
Yep.
That's
So
how
maybe
you're getting the nice rock face lit
What I'm-
up.
What I'm gonna do for simplicity's sake is I'm gonna stick with roughly the reference. I don't mind the clouds. They're, you know, nondescript, they're not taking a whole lot. A little bit equally spaced. So maybe I'll make this smaller one. And make the bigger one a little bigger.
the one in the photo actually reminds me of a palette knife.
Yeah, it should be.
I think these are better just because we have so much nice detail in the front. And
Right.
they have to be there, but we don't want them to take away.
Yeah, and what I want you guys to be aware of is if you choose to do this reference as well, feel free to, you know, improvise or add other things. What I did here, you see this cloud, then the bottom of this cloud, the bottom of this cloud, is I just stair stepped them right along with this mountain. Bad job, me. So I'm gonna make it so they're not like that as so much. So maybe I'll bring, you know, so it kind of gets overlapped from behind here.
That's what you would call a tangent.
Tangent, yeah, or a force field is what I always think of. Like the mountain, these clouds, mountains do not know each other exist. These clouds are behind the mountains.
it also would stop the eye from going off the edge to the left and would bring you back into the painting to see the house on the cliff.
Yes, exactly. Good point. All right, so I'm gonna step back, give myself a minute to kind of observe it. But basically, I'm just looking for big placement. I did open up my water probably more. So I might need to actually, let's do that. I'm already noticing that this line here is not such an angle. Kind of goes from here and goes across almost. There we go. So I'm going to give myself more of that ground plane down below the cliff. That'll give me more room for this road to exist if I choose to, in that amazing white car. I also didn't put in my pine tree. If I do want it, just kind of there. And another one kind of beside it, just kind of a dark space, and it kind of comes down. It's kind of a nice way to control the eye from going off, and it kind of with this angle, it can kind of bring it back in because we're gonna have an angle over here as well. So we kind of got this U shape along the bottom that'll kind of keep us in here a little bit. And I could even think about that a little bit in the sky if there's any way I could incorporate that formation, kind of create a circular pattern within all these angles, but I don't know how I'd do it. All right, let me step back, observe that. but I'm constantly looking for anything that's wrong and easy to, well, no, not wrong and easy to fix, anything that's wrong. Because it's much easier to fix it now than it
There's a
is.
little tangent in the top right corner that bothered me in the reference photo. Yep, down where it meets the tree. To
Here.
the left, yep. That is in the photo as well. I don't know if you make the
Drop
trees
that
bigger.
out back there, bring the tree out to here.
Yep,
And there's that. Thank you. Great catch. I'm also going to lower this a little bit. Just so I can have a little bit more of an angle. And I often will do my angles in kind of straight lines going back.
Those three mountains that you're working at right now, those first three, they all kind of end exactly the same. Yep, those three mountains on the left. Yep.
Yeah, right here. So that's
Some
why
of that had to do with the way the land was formed though, right?
I don't know if these. I
But
mean,
they
if
all
it's-
look kind of like tangents because each one of them ends exactly the same almost.
Yeah, so I extended the base out a little bit further.
There's actually 4 buttes there,
Yeah,
including the front one.
they sure
Wow.
do blend together though.
Wow.
Okay. Again, now I'm stepping back. I keep seeing something really obvious that I should have been able to see from up close. And again, I would rather just kind of, you know, you guys see what I would do. And if I were doing all of this, I might do more measuring. I might figure out a little better. But I guess now I'm to the point where let's just pretend it's almost like plein air. Like I'm painting with, you know, time, especially if I was painting sunset, right? So I'm just kind of, I've got my reference in my hand. I'm just kind of looking down, looking up. It's definitely different. I've compacted things a little more. It feels not as vast. I feel like my mountains are bigger in the background. I've kind of scooted in my cliff to the left a little bit of where the Vista House is. But I kind of like it. And it kind of, in a way, makes the cliffs feel bigger because it is a gorge. And it's weird when you're out there. Sometimes I have to exaggerate the height of things a little bit to make it feel like it feels versus when you start doing measurements and figuring out this and that. I'm going to chop this back hill, though. I feel like this far hill is too tall. So I'm bringing him down just so he even falls further back into space. Just going to dry that off. I put quite a bit of paint thinner that'll make any paint I add on top a little bit difficult. Just using my paper towel. Okay. So let's pretend this is the best drawing you've ever seen, and I'm ready to move on to the next stage. Oftentimes what I will do now is just grab a dry, clean brush, and I'm just gonna hit that a little bit. And all I'm doing is just spreading out that paint thinner. It's gonna help that layer dry a little faster. It also just kind of creates this pink undercolor in a lot of the transition areas that might be useful, might not, I don't know.
you use the transparent red for that?
Yeah, that's just all quinacridone red. I easily could have added a little bit of blue since it's such a blue, you know, so many blue shapes that maybe would have been better served to do it with purples, or I could have even used blue. I could have also stained the whole canvas blue with like my ultramarine or something, and then done a wipe away. You know, there's a lot of ways I could approach this painting. I could also do it as a value painting and then come back over and color it. But what I want to do is speed this up. I'm going to pretend that it's almost an oversized plein air painting. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look to my values, my lights and my darks, and I'm going to start to establish. I know my darkest darks are in my foreground, and then they get lighter as they go back. This side is also very blue. This side's a little warmer. It's catching the light. So what I'm going to use is my darks, and also my shadows. What temperature do they get as they come towards me? My shadows, my darks.
Warm shade.
Warmer. So I'm making a big pile. It's primarily my burnt umber, and it has some ultramarine in it. I'm going to proceed to add more ultramarine or manganese blue to it as we get back further. But I'll also probably at some point begin to add a little bit of white or whatever color to begin to lighten it down. I do want my, so I paint dark to light, big to small, big shapes to small shapes, and thin to thick. So I want my darks generally to be a little bit thinner. So I'm mixing a bit of paint thinner into this. I could also do it by scrubbing it in a little bit if I wanted to. I could also, have just less paint. So I'm just kind of marking in my darkest darks here. And that's in this area here. I'm not putting in detail yet. I'm just thinking big shapes because I'm gonna have to come back in and paint all around this, right? I don't have my water. I don't have the ground that's down below. So I'm just gonna kind of put in almost like a very poorly drawn triangle down here, but I'm just marking my darkest darks so I know, and my warmest darks probably as well. So I know that as I recede into space, that it's going to get a little cooler, my shadows, and a touch lighter. I'm just grabbing quite a bit of ultramarine. I'm going to let these shadows already start to get a lot bluer. And again, this is kind of how I would approach my a plein air painting. I'm just going to paint fast. I'm not thinking detail. I'm thinking big shapes and big values. And again, I like to kind of establish my shadows and my darks. Michelle, you were asking about your creek painting. Remember the background?
Yes, yep.
So this is kind of the thing I do. It's not only at the beginning. Sometimes I'll completely forget about my shadows and lose my structure because I think of my shadows as giving me that structure of which I'm going to build my colors and my lights on top of. So I will come back in and reestablish kind of a shadow pattern, or, you know, again, my structure, my roadmap, and that allows me to get right back into the painting. All these darks can be adjusted as well. Again, I'm almost just like, it's almost like stage 2 of doing my map. I do know some painters that'll be very specific, like, oh, the shadow's hitting just right there and right there. But I know that I can layer my paint, especially if I'm keeping my darks fairly thin. It's still, after all these years, is amazing to me how brutal and ugly the painting can be in the beginning. But I just have to trust the process. Dark to light, thin to thick, big to small. The details will come. The light will reveal the colors. And just trusting myself and trusting that those things will happen. Because I'm just like you. I look at this and I'm like, oh, look at those beautiful reds and blues and you know those amazing temperatures. But I've got to give them a home. Got to give them somewhere to nest, somewhere to live. And to build a home, you want to build a foundation. We're attracted to the drapes and the carpets and the wall color paint, but we got to build our foundation first and then build our home. And then we can add the decorations. Hopefully these shadows are getting a little bluer. They're still really quite dark. They're just a tiny bit cooler than the really foreground ones in the left corner there. They're cooling down pretty quickly as they get further away and getting a little bit lighter. But it'll really help my illusion of 3 dimensions if I play up the contrast, maybe even a little more than I'm seeing in reality. You can always, it's easier to lighten than it is to darken later on in the painting, I find. Dark to light. You can also keep a lot of these external areas of the painting. I can, you know, stylistically or even optically, I can let that detail be a lot less and let the eye really focus in on there, just like a human eye would see. Or I can paint more like a camera and treat all the areas equally. So that's a design choice and a detail choice that you get to make on each and every painting. Am I painting like a human sees or painting like a camera sees? That is one problem about painting from a photo, is it's treating all areas equally. Unless I had blurred it out on an app or somehow in my photo, which I didn't. I just said, camera, capture as much of this information as you can. I'll decide all of that stuff later. After I get enough of my shadows in, I can just kind of begin to drag them loosely, and I'll create a little bit more of a value map for myself. But the paint's very thin, so I can bring colors in across the top very quickly. So I know all these trees, even when they're being hit by light, are still really quite dark, especially compared to the light areas, right?
Yeah.
So I can make them pretty dark, but I'm just leaving them enough light there that I know where to put some color. paints are getting really thin on the palette, so I'm just gonna go ahead and repile them up, make another pile of darks, so that I can dip in, not just try and looks really dark. I must have had more burnt umber in that than I thought. I'm gonna go ahead and get down to this area down here, which is quite a bit further. It's a big cliff. Like when you're driving down on this highway, you guys saw how tiny the little car was in the distance. So I know that this is gonna get quite a bit lighter. And when I look at this, the values in these shadows are only a little bit darker actually than the values in these shadows. Again, probably hard to see on here, and especially hard to see through my shiny plastic. But I do know that I want a pretty big jump from this dark to the darks that exist in here. So I'm gonna go ahead and mix up and actually add a little white finally.
If we were to try and find a reference photo of our own, what would be the characteristics that we would be looking for to choose the correct painting, the correct
Yeah,
subject?
what I'm looking for is strong and cool contrast.
Okay.
So it could be, you know, lots and lots of different things. It could be sunrise, sunset, of course. It could be fall. It could be just a red barn against a blue landscape, you know, lots and lots of things. What I constantly am thinking about is the light source. Like I prefer, if you want a dynamic painting, you probably want dynamic lighting, which generally will mean a strong light source, which will give you stronger shadows. Right? So that, and inevitably there, especially if you have a warm light source like we do, will give you cool shadows. Warm light, cool shadows, cool light, warm shadows. Rarely, but when, you know, I think that's confusing to a lot of beginners when you say cool light, warm shadows. The shadows aren't red, you know, they're just warmer than they. Some of these colors, especially the burnt umber, is a much stickier paint. So I'm just kind of aware of that. All right, let's see. That's not a very big jump in value from here to here. So I can go ahead and add just some more white, a little more blue. And I'm still adding some of this burnt umber that's in here because I know that it's not getting to these really vibrant blues back here. So I want to transition a jump from here to here, but I don't want the same jump as from here to here. So I can use those as kind of sounding boards. Maybe could even in theory make it tiny bit lighter. And I can also fudge it a little bit. I can make it a little bit lighter right where they meet, where those two shadows meet. But I want to make it subtle enough that the viewer doesn't see that I'm kind of pushing it a little bit, and then I can bring it back and let it get a little bit darker, even though it's not real. Optically, it will work, hopefully. I'm just looking for an older beat up brush so I can.
It
push.
works on my a lot lighter than the foreground.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a vibrant blue. I might want to add a little bit of more burnt umber, or I could add a little bit of red, a little bit of yellow, just to kind of gray that down. I also have my burnt or my little Payne's gray that I haven't even touched. Would be a nice shortcut for a lot of this stuff that I'm doing.
Yeah, that's it.
There we go.
I really like Payne's gray.
Yeah.
Payne's gray and sap green are two kind of fun colors, I think.
What's that?
Sap green and Payne's gray.
Yeah.
Gray is a great color, or great, yeah.
I'll go along with that.
Yeah, it's a great shortcut as long as you know that it's very blue.
Mm.
I still haven't used it yet.
So in this particular case, and I'm going back to previous class, you took a shortcut to create your grays. You didn't mix all your colors to make gray. You did burnt umber and ultramarine.
Yeah, oftentimes, and I did in this one too. Yeah, only time I did all of my colors was when we did the ocean scene. That I can ever remember doing it in a class.
I think it was something we talked about in a class when we were doing the gray scales. Because it was this class when we talked about mixing different grays.
Yeah, but where I mixed
Yes, it was.
all 6 of my primary colors.
To make
I did
the
that on the ocean one, on the nighttime ocean.
mm-hmm.
But otherwise, yeah, I will oftentimes shortcut it. Especially because this is, all of this is in shadow, even though it's very, very blue and not very dark because of all the atmosphere. But this painting is more in shadow than not.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, definitely. I'm not against shortcuts. I just want people to be aware of the what's, whys, and hows, and other ways they could do it. If you got to your place you're going to paint and you're like, oh, I don't have Payne's gray, can't paint this. There's 100 ways to make Payne's gray or something similar enough. Okay.
Already, that has incredible depth.
Oh, good. So now I'm going to jump back to these hills. Oh, I guess I got to get in this little blob if I want him here. And I'm still trying to keep my all these darks fairly thin. I do want them to cover. I don't want, to be able to see through them too much to the white of the canvas. All right, we're jumping back here. It is just slightly bluer, but it's still quite, I might even add just a touch of yellow to it. I'm gonna go ahead and dip into my Payne's gray. How you doing? Sorry for ignoring you. And I could warm it up with just a touch of my manganese, just because it's a little bit more, it's like a purpley dark green compared to the blues as it goes back. So I'm just gonna add a touch of manganese, quinacridone, just so that it comes forward compared to these others a little bit, which it will already do just because of the value, but may as well. And I'm just trying to get big areas. Just because I'm painting these as big solids doesn't mean they're going to stay as big solids. I can come back in and add light spaces on top. And I can even paint wet into wet because I can use a light touch and a lot more paint as I'm lightening my painting. So with a light touch and thicker paint, you'll be able to just keep adding onto this painting wet into wet, building up my layers. I'm going to change that shape a little bit. There's a touch of green where he's getting a little bit of light. It's not a strong light. It's probably reflecting down off the top of the sky. It's just a tiny bit greener on top. Not much, but it's going to help me separate the top versus the sides, hopefully. Don't know if it's reading is a little bit greener on top. I maybe could push that just a touch more. But
It
definitely
is.
to read as green, just a little more greenish. Glad we're past the super bright colors stage of the class, because I do find even within this bright, colorful painting, I find so much interest in the subtleties, in the little transitions within the colors. You know, within this purple to blue to greenish on top. Again, it's kind of hard to see because of the reflection and stuff, but that's the kind of things I hope are almost like rewards for somebody that spends a little more time looking at my painting, or when they buy it and take it home, they're like, had it for a month or two, and they're just like, oh my gosh, did you see that? You know, there's these nice little transitions going on in here.
And I'm sure that's exactly the language they use when they're looking at it.
So within my piles of paint, I can create some transitions now too. So it gets darker to lighter. So I can begin to use that. And the truth is, you guys, I could have pre-mixed all these colors, right? That would have been really smart and really great. And then I'd have been able to judge them on my palette before even, because right now I'm just kind of guessing and, you know, shooting in the dark a little bit until I grab some of this paint and get it up beside the previous value. I think it could be a little lighter than that. But I got to give it a lot of room because it's going to get really quite light by the time it gets back here.
Michael, I have to say that I realize that it's an artist's prerogative to paint things the way they want to or the way they see them. But I have to be honest, I like the clouds the way they are in the picture, because that way they don't steal from the actual feeling and the of the front of the picture and the water. And, you know, it's like, oh, they're there, but they don't, you know, they're not that important. It's the other stuff that looks more important.
Yeah, I agree with you on this one. And maybe just because I'm being lazy and I want to keep moving forward, but I do want those of you who don't necessarily agree or would like to try other things to, you know, look at other cloud variations, but just be aware that they've got to be front lit. Because if you put in backlit clouds, front lit mountains, side lit trees, it gets really, that's where the world starts to fall apart. Then you've got multiple suns, you're on some Star Wars planet.
You'll notice the same idea in filmmaking or TV shows. A lot of times if there's something that's wrong with the lighting, it just, I don't know, even though someone may not be conscious of that's what it is, it's less believable, or there's just something that gives you an uncomfortable feeling.
Yep.
Yeah. My daughter's constantly noticing when there's two people talking and it bounces back and forth between them, that they're in, one of them's in different lighting than the other one. So a lot of times they want whatever view to be face, you know, have that their face in light. But if one of them is backlit, then the other one can be face lit. So they both can't be face lit if there's two people facing each other and talking to each other. So there you go. I've ruined TV. More time to paint.
That's right.
Next jump to that next hill is very minor. So you could almost just do it the same value, which I may just do by just having a little bit of a separation of make it slightly lighter where they meet. And I'm going to do that here too.
So what did you just add?
White, well, I mean, light blue to it so that there's a little more differentiation between the darks and the lights. And
Thank
then I
you.
blend that out and it just hopefully becomes just like we were just talking about, a little less obvious. Nobody notices, but it's still, you can feel that just kind of like I did here. And watch what will happen here. I can just a little bit more of the light blue and you get a bigger jump. But all I have to do is just blend that transition out. And all of a sudden it feels much more naturalistic and it creates more of a sense of depth, but it also isn't like I've lightened up the whole area. So I could do that on each hill as well. And you know, if somebody does investigate a little too close and notices, then it just looks like fog.
Thank you.
Thinner. Getting a little more vibrant blue, which is kind of interesting. It's a lot bluer than you see in Oregon a lot, because yeah, they do gray down a lot, but because of the warm light, that contrast is really making these blues blue. I don't know if you guys have ever seen when you're standing on a nice golden beach at sunset and you turn and face away from the sunset and you look at your own shadow on the beach. It's like purple or blue against the golden sand under the golden light. It's such a neat illusion. Shadows just
Like the shadows on the snow here are blue.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
In fact, the shadows on the snow are about the blue you're painting.
Yeah, I bet so.
Yeah.
And your reference photo, it's pretty vibrant blue in the back, even though it fades and lightens, it is pretty vibrant, but that's a nice complement to the orange sort of hills.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it really is. I mean, that's because the clouds aren't really interesting. There's nothing going on in the photo, but yeah, that's the one I gravitate towards out of all the hundreds of pictures I've taken of, I've got some really beautiful weather effects going on with, clouds rolling in and all these interesting things from all my visits up there, because I go up there a lot. In fact, I'll be teaching a plein air one-day class up there through OSA this summer or spring.
Lucky.
I love painting up there.
My girlfriend who lives in Scappoose said that the gorge was hit hard with wind and ice that stopped traffic for nearly a week.
Oh yeah, no, it's a big wind tunnel, and when the wind comes from the east, it's coming from like Montana and stuff. It's so cold, and that's what happened to Portland. Is that wind came from the east? Normally, our wind is from the coast, from the west, and it's almost warmer. And that, in fact, that's what's happening right now, as we've got the Pineapple Express going through. So our weather went from within a week from like 17 degrees to 60 degrees. And it's just a matter of the wind changing direction coming from the east or the west.
And my family members who bought ski passes are so bummed.
Oh.
That it's so warm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet so.
Well, they didn't even have snow until in December, I think. And then it wasn't much, but that really cold spell was coming down from the Arctic, from Alaska area, I read that they had so much snow in Alaska that it was caving in the roofs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Especially if it's wet, heavy snow.
Right.
In northern Wisconsin, that's actually what do I want to say? It's a career in the winter, shoveling roofs, shoveling rooftops.
And hopefully they're getting danger pay.
That's
Boy.
why we put metal roofing on ours finally. It slides.
Flies off.
Yeah.
Go up and grease your roof every couple months.
No, I don't think people grease their roof.
Gotta season it like a skillet.
Try having 18 inches of ice on your metal roof.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What does that do?
It makes your
Cause leaks.
it makes your roof kind of bend down. I mean, you know, hopefully you have good joists up there.
It's got
Yeah.
to weigh
Oh
it.
my God. But I had 18 inches all over of ice on the yard, the driveway, the
Wow.
street, my 60-foot deck across my house. Oh my God, 60 by 12, 18 inches of ice.
Wow.
Good for you.
Turn that frown upside down, you've got a skating rink.
Well, that's why I moved from the north.
We had 24 inches of snow and it's all melted except for the shadows now. So they'll be screaming flooding here pretty soon.
Yeah, they will.
Oh, scary.
These big swings are tough.
Can't fight Mother Nature, whatever she
I was gonna
wants.
say it. It's called winter in the Midwest.
Yeah, and in the east.
One of my favorite
Mhm.
quotes, one of my favorite comedy quotes of all time is everybody talks about the weather, or everybody complains about the weather, and nobody does a thing about it.
It's cute.
Well, the weather changes all the time. Seasons change and this country's been or this world has been through so many heat spells and so many cold spells. It just keeps changing.
Looks like it's gonna get weirder and weirder for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, but we're tough. We'll live through it.
I wasn't here at the beginning of the class. I didn't get in until like 1 o'clock, but I don't know. Did you guys talk at all about the Mona Lisa painting? What happened to it?
Somebody threw, what was
Oh,
it?
yeah.
Yeah,
Some couple people threw soup at it.
but it
Oh my
was
gosh.
covered with glass, so they didn't damage it any.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But I mean, it's crazy. I mean,
of it. It's just
they
the
were-
idea of it. That's,
they were protesting and it had nothing to do with the painting or the museum or anything.
People are just nuts today. They're just nuts.
Yeah.
Well, you gotta admit they got their publicity.
yeah.
Now, you don't remember what it was for, but they got their publicity.
Well, it just, I don't know, the world's gone crazy. The whole world's gone crazy. It's not just the United States.
Now, Michael, are you going to gray out those mountains more, bring down the blue a little?
I don't know. I'll have to, yeah, I mean, maybe, but the reason I picked this picture was because of those blues and oranges.
Yeah.
So, in theory, I could even exaggerate them more. I feel like I'm already graying them down compared to the reference.
Wow.
I won't know until I get it covered. A lot of times that's the thing, is you just got to kind of get it covered up so that you can really start to judge it. Sure, this blue was so much lighter.
That's the cool thing about glazes too. You can just put a little glaze over that and change
yeah.
it completely.
Absolutely.
But with the world as crazy as it is, that's all the more reason to create beauty to protest against the ugliness.
There you go.
If we give them
Agreed.
Good point.
targets to throw paint, I mean, tomato soup. Yeah, just kidding.
The sad thing about with inflation and everything like that, art is one of the first things that people stop buying.
It's true.
I think that's one of the marks of civilization and a more civilized society is after everyone, what is that, the something hierarchy of needs?
Mhm.
Maslow's.
Yes, that, you know, creating art and enjoying art and buying art shows that we've gone beyond just getting our basic needs met.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Makes a pretty good sized pile of couple bluey, almost greenish, added a little bit of yellow. I'm just kind of, I was reminded by myself, just got to get this thing covered, buddy. And then you can really come in and start to judge and manipulate and alter and nest and paint your water way up on your hills on accident. I'll come down and bring some reflections in and, you know, mess this up a little bit. Cause right now it's just kind of like big shapes. But I don't know how long I've been working on it. I mean, the class is already over, but how long I've been working on this, but I've got a lot covered. I mean, this is a 16-inch by 20-inch surface. How many of you are going to be able to join us tomorrow for?
I will.
I hope
wish
I can.
could.
Part of the time, I have something going before and after, but I'll be there for about an hour or so.
I'm gonna try if I can trust my husband to behave better than he did this week.
I wish I could join tomorrow, but unfortunately I can't be here.
I won't be able to. Last week I had a doctor's appointment on Thursday at the time. It took me 2 hours to get there and an hour there and 2 hours to get back. So tomorrow I have another doctor's appointment at 10 o'clock. So it takes me an hour to get to town. So I'm like hours away from everything. So it just messes up my day when I have to leave the farm, as I like to say.
I'm hoping that I can drop in late. I have a 9 o'clock appointment, so hopefully I can tag in at the end.
How late do you stay on, Michael?
Yes, last week we stayed till 1, but I mean, it's scheduled till 12.
Okay.
It's scheduled for 3 hours, but if, you know, if I'm just painting away and I'm going to keep painting and everybody else is happily painting along, there's no reason to turn it off. There's nothing going on at OSA's because we're using their Zoom. They said that nothing happening, so.
Time is irrelevant when you're painting, it just seems to go.
I lose hours painting.
Well, what I can do too, because we're already, and I haven't even started to talk to you guys about your work. What I can do is I can just simply push record tomorrow. I won't be talking as much, but I can keep painting on this.
That would be great.
That would be wonderful.
Because yeah, I don't want to keep you guys for, I mean, we're already going to be possibly an hour longer just. But you guys can see how quickly I'm covering it, and you can see how easy, if I wanted to, let's just pretend I was already to the trees, I would have cleaned my brush first and foremost. But you know, let's say I want to paint some green trees in here. They're not much greener than that, they're just slightly greener. A little bit of red because they're pine trees. But now I don't need to paint tree. I can just simply get so much done. By creating the shape of those light areas in comparison to the shape of those shadows. We're not painting things, we are painting shapes. I don't like the color I chose, but you can get the general feel, right? That
Yeah.
it's just shapes. And you guys, hopefully, being my generous viewing audience, will turn these into trees. Just by the simple fact that, you know, maybe I design one or two of them to be a little more, to help you, you know, tell you what it is. Yeah, painting with a very dirty brush. But yeah, you can see how I can begin to bring detail in here, like within the water. You know, I've just painted it so flat, but very quickly. Now I just mix up another color and I'm just going to drag it across the top. And I can create little directional current, you know, value shifts. That's pretty subtle. Maybe need a little more white than that for the viewers at home. But that's what I'll do, is just get these big shapes knocked in. You know, I bring in my orangey color down towards the base, going up towards yellow, and then it eventually actually turns kind of greenish, which is really nice because then the little bits of pink or kind of salmony colors, even though they're subtle, they're not really dark, you know, and not really bright, but it's kind of beautiful against that greenish color. Yeah, and then when I have all my brushes dirty here, I can simply just mix up a pile of whatever this kind of rust color, you know, if I wanted to shortcut it and pull up some kind of a brick red color or a brown, I definitely could. I could reach over here to my burnt umber to bring these down because they're not so, you know, so bright. In fact, I can create the shadow side by mixing some blues into there and getting into those shadows and slowly just getting to the brighter red. And I can decide, you know, how bright is bright red. You know, it looks really bright on here because it's compared to blues and greens, so I know that it's not a true red. We can just test that by simply putting some red paint near there. And you can really see, okay, well, it's definitely not that vibrant. So that's another nice thing about having plastic on there, is I can test colors on there. So, you know, if I put this red that I just put on the plastic that I know isn't right on here, you know, it's just too hot. Unless you're really leaning in and pushing the sun's warmth hitting it, but
I like it.
yeah, and you could play that up. There's no reason you know, but I feel like I'll probably get a similar result without being too crazy if I you know, use my more browned down version, and then I can especially put in the shadow and dark areas and stuff.
After you get this covered, do you do anything to those brush strokes that you've laid down, or do you just go over the top of them then?
It's up to you. I do know if I have kind of oily paint that the weird brush strokes all over the place will be distracting. So a lot of times I might come back and just kind of, I could use them more directionally. Right now I'm just kind of knocking paint over. But yeah, I definitely can use the brush strokes as a tool to help tell the viewer what the structure is. You know, is it going down? Is it coming across? And that is a great tool. So a lot of times I'll kind of come back at the end and just kind of redirectionalize. If I want to have thick, juicy paint, then I probably wouldn't brush it out. But if I, you know, didn't care, I could come through with a soft brush, you know, and simply redirectionalize it a little bit, just kind of so that it's not catching the glare the same way, and it's not fighting against itself. In fact, I did a commission where there was 2 or 3 big brush strokes in the sky that were going counter angle. The color that I put down and everything was exactly the same, but because the brush strokes were pretty thick in their house, it just looked like a weird sideways glare all of a sudden, you know, because it just caught the light so differently that they actually brought it back and had me paint back. You know, I had to sand that area down a little bit and repaint it, which I totally understood. You know, in my studio, it was not catching the light, but then they showed me photos of in their house. I was like, yeah, we got to fix that. So anyways, that is where I'm going to leave it for today. But yeah, we'll work on this. What do you guys think? Should we actually work on this for 2 weeks, or do you think 1 week? I think kind of.
Well, and the second week, we never get to, it ends, right? So we don't ever get to really go back unless we do it in our Padlet.
Yeah, that is true. I think
thought
what I'll do is kind of give you guys demos and lessons and not ask that you keep up. So you can kind of decide, like we have the next 2 paintings, and maybe we even bring that down to just, instead of 3 paintings, 2 paintings.
Yeah.
That sounds better.
Okay. So what I will do next week then in class is either work on this one if I don't get it, you know, far enough, or I will start doing the I'm going to do the underpainting by myself. The black and white acrylic underpainting, because I want to show you guys the glazing. I don't need you to watch the underpainting. You guys all understand that part of it.
Yes.
So I'll do, and then I'm going to bring a black and white, that kind of foggy one that I showed you with all the blues and stuff. I'm going to do that and come back and teach you guys about glazing and opacity within the same painting. This one's going to be very much more Monet, very thick, very juicy, much more direct painting. The next painting after this one is going to be indirect painting, where you let the layers dry a little bit and you can use glazing into it. Does that make sense?
What's the goal of that one? If this one is strong, warm, and cool contrast and strong light source, what's the goal of the second painting?
Transparent and opaque paint, and how to use that to create luminosity. So yeah, this one's about color, and color will still be relevant in the next one after this, but and temperature. But then the next one's also going to be using different types of paint. So I think so many people just think, you know, direct painting, alla prima. I want to teach you guys about indirect painting and how to build up a painting if you want to create the glow that way.
Okay.
I think that glazing and transparent paint is really underutilized in oil painting these days. It's all become about the speed painting, about the plein air, about the alla prima, you know, painting all at once. You know, now with Instagram and everything else, and you know, we're expected to do a painting a day and have something to show, and it's just not. I think we're
And-
losing a huge amount of what makes classical paintings classical and what makes gorgeous work, you know. So anyways, we'll talk about that starting next week. So this week, just get as far as you want. Maybe don't do a 16 by 20 inch. You know, it doesn't have to be really tight and rendery either. More looks pretty ugly on the panel here, or on the computer monitor. We'll get it fixed up. You can see how I'm just blocking in my big shapes.
Okay, tell us again exactly what the assignment is.
Yes,
Paint a warm and cool painting. So whatever you decide. So using that handout that I gave you, gives you kind of a number of different ways you can choose to do it. But this is about creating glow through that contrast of warm and cool colors. Kind of piggybacking on the previous lesson where you're using contrasting colors. You can see I'll have greens next to reds and blues next to, purples next to yellows. And that's, I'll have multiple of those within this one painting of these contrasting or complementary color schemes. But the primary is the blue versus the orange, isn't it? That's the big push, is those orangey rocks, and then everything else is kind of bluish or greenish. And then we'll also have some of that orange in the sky, which will contrast. So yeah, that is the homework for this week is, and you can choose this subject if you want. It can be simpler than I'm making it, even though it looks pretty simple right now as I just blocked everything in. I will be working on this tomorrow, I think. No guarantees. I've got to figure out who I owe paintings to and what that schedule is. But I think I'll be able to work on this tomorrow and at least get it covered. And I'm having a good time, so I'd like to get back to it. And so now we're going to take another break. And those of you who can hang with me, I am going to be very, very mean on your critiques. Very short. I'm going to be very short with you.
Okay.
And I'm going to go drink some whiskey really quick and get all fired up.
Whiskey makes you mean.
You'll
Yeah,
have to get whiskeyed up to be
it
mean.
it never has made me mean, but I hear that it maybe tequila. I don't know. Anyways, let's take a tiny bit longer break. So how about 10 to 1? We'll come back. And again, I don't expect everybody to be able to make it back. This is a long class, but those of you who want to be yelled at, come on back.
I have to leave, but could you yell at me virtually so I can be yelled at later?
Yep. Who am I talking to? Was that Lisa?
Sorry, this is Lisa.
Great.
I won't be able to be here tomorrow. Otherwise, I would just do that.
Yeah, but I'm not going to do critiquing on those days either.
Okay,
Just because that's my work time.
sure.
Changing camera here. And all right. Somebody
back
make a
again.
note, yell at Lisa, virtual Lisa, and great. I'm going to go ahead and stop this recording. So part 3 will be the critiques, part 2, the demo, part 1, the lesson, and talking about all the other stuff we did this morning. So great. I'll see you guys
Awesome.
in 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.